Hey there, holes, poles, chicks, dicks, everybody who's listening to the sound of my voice or watching us on YouTube. Thank you for checking out the podcast. We have another great interview lined up with Sally Blanky. We're talking about sugar babies, sugar daddies, all that goes around that stuff. Well, not all of it, because there's a lot to get into, but some completely new to me. So stick around for that. Before we get there, I want to say thank you to Manscaped. Manscaped.com. Use promo code Come With Us. You get 20% off your order and you get free shipping. Now, what are you going to get at Manscaped.com? You're going to see the Lawnmower 4.0. Anytime you're grooming any body hair, guys or girls, down on your balls, right around your junk, all that, you got the sharpest blades. They're safe. They also have the little guard on there so you can adjust the height. Ladies, you can copy Beth, trim your pussy just like she does. It's also got that little flashlight on there, so when you're down there rooting around, you can see exactly what you're doing, and that's important because that's what keeps you safe. You'll also see, the ball deodorant, the chafing gel that, I put it on every day when I get out of the shower. Keeps you nice, it smells good, keeps you fresh down there. There's also the Weed Whacker. That Weed Whacker 2.0 is going to go up, clean out your nose hairs, your ear hair, everything you need to keep you looking your best. Your balls are going to thank you. Well, your partner's going to thank you, especially if they spend any time below your belt too, guys or girls. Just keep it nice and cleaned up. Get to manscaped.com. Use promo code Come With Us. You'll get 20% off your order and free shipping. That's manscaped.com. Promo code Come With Us to get 20% off your order. All right. You want to learn about sugar babies and sugar daddies? Let's do this.
Are you saying you faked with me?
Yeah.
Wrong. Now you're single.
What do you know about sexual relations?
Is it true that if you don't use it, you lose it?
I'm a little worried about being a slut.
You're listening to the Come With Us podcast, talking the good, the kinky, and the ugly. Here are your hosts, Beth, Aaron, and Tina.
Hello, all you sexy holes and poles. Welcome to Come With Us podcast, where you're part of all the naughty, sexy, fun conversations that everyone wants to listen in on. Today, we have Sally Blanky of SeraffinasWorld.com back with us today. Last week, she was on and we talked about the sexy parties that she throws, because I call her a modern day courtesan, even though she isn't really doing that so much these days. But she entered the world of sexy stuff, started throwing parties, and became what I think of as an expert sugar baby. That's what we're going to talk about today. I'm Beth Darling, sexy genius, head of sexyedschool.com, where smart, successful, and even spiritual people go for their graduate degree in love. It is my pleasure to be here today with you guys, Tina and Aaron. I'm so glad you're here. And welcome back, Sally. So glad that you agreed to stay with us for a second episode of Come With Us podcast, so we can talk to you and learn all about the world of sugar babies, because that's not something I know about, and I'm really excited to hear what the reality is. We hear the terms, but we never think about the reality. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So last time we talked about how you entered the world. Your boyfriend took you to a sexy party and you were like, okay, I can throw better ones than that. You started doing that. Well, how did you then morph into, again, what I think of as a modern day courtesan, as a sugar baby? And feel free to disagree with that description too.
Yeah, no, it's kind of interesting. It's like when I look back, it's one of those things I kind of hardly even know how it happened. Just in case anyone wasn't listening to last week, I said, like, I'm the least likely person to be in this world. Like, I grew up in England. I went to an all-girls boarding school. For the majority of my life, I was monogamously married. Now, I know that this is not an uncommon thing, though it's going to kind of sound shocking. I think that it started for me with a fantasy. And I think, like a lot of people I know have a prostitution fantasy. What would it be like to, be a prostitute, to get paid,
Get paid for services. I actually have a couple, by the way, that several years ago, their sexy life, they'd been together for 30 or 40 years or something, and it was a little slow. They actually just started acting upon that. So when they would have sexy, in the mornings or during the daytime, he would leave cash on his nightstand for her afterwards. And that way she could know the more cash, it was like, oh, the better job she did. And that really inspired her. So they just played with that, which I think is pretty awesome and very cool. So yeah, you're not the only one having that fantasy.
I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, like, that's the thing about fantasies. Sometimes someone says, oh, someone had this fantasy or that fantasy, and people judge people's fantasies, but people fantasize about a lot of things.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Then I was going to say, I think what happened was somebody who knew me just from online had a sugar daddy and knew that I did the parties and asked me if I would be open to joining her as the extra girl with her daddy. And it was a very interesting thing because in my previous life, I basically started the spray tanning trend in pretty much in America. Like, I got all the press for it. And I had a huge celebrity clientele. So the interesting thing is, I have been around an enormous amount of wealth and celebrity. I've been in so many people's houses. When I went to this gentleman's house, first of all in New York City, I was blown away because it was wealth at a whole other level that makes the most A-list celebrities look like paupers. There were Chagall's, there were Picasso's, like taking up a whole wall, you know. It was wealth at a whole other level. And then it was quite interesting that I also got to go with this girl to this guy's Hamptons home. And again, whole other level, you know, and I was just like, you know what, this is really, really interesting. And that was actually very interesting because this guy actually took a liking to me because apparently I look very much like his old girlfriend, and he asked if he could see me on my own. And I asked my friend if she was cool with it, and she was like, you know, absolutely. And the truth is that for me, like, I was just kind of like, you know, exploring. And the truth is, you know, I'm not really a prostitute. Like, I'm actually not up for kind of doing some kind of sexual act for money for anything that's unpleasant for me. So, you know, for me, my whole game in that world was, you know, only if I find someone really interesting that I would date in real life, who I really like, whose sensuality is aligned with mine. And
I would suggest that's actually the power, right? That's the difference between being sort of desperate and making it your chosen profession. Because the same could be true as lawyers who take cases they don't really want. I never did that. I never wanted to. Right? They're always in every career. When we feel powerful, then we get to choose what parts of those services or career or profession we get to engage in. And so I think that that's an important thing to notice, is that when you have the right to say no, that's when you have choice. When you just have to accept whatever's thrown your way, that's desperation.
The thing that I find really interesting is, you know, because I've talked about quite a lot of this stuff, you know, online, you know, in my community on different podcasts, and so many women, they're like, oh, I want a sugar daddy. And I think to myself, I kind of like get this feeling in the pit of my stomach because it's really not that easy. And it's not that easy to do it right.
Yes, yeah.
You do not go into this world to pay your electricity bill. Like, you have to really kind of go into it with very strong boundaries.
Yes.
So, for example, like I teach in my courses for women, I teach something that I teach a whole thing, but part of it is dating for sex and dating for money. And dating for sex isn't just, oh my God, I want to go out and get fucked. It's like, you have to really understand who you are sexually, you know, what your kinks are, what you like, you know, and really be comfortable setting boundaries, asking for what you want. And until you really are that person, you have no business dating for money. And then dating for money, truthfully, for me, it's not about finding a sugar daddy, because I truthfully believe that we should all have huge, big dreams in life, and we should go out and get them for ourselves, or, you could meet someone you fall in love with on a sugar daddy site. But to me, that period of time experimenting with sugaring can be a really good opportunity to learn about asking for things. Like, to me, I think it can be like an MBA.
Absolutely.
So for me, like, I dated a billionaire for 2 years. For a year and a half, I dated a very, very famous lawyer who argued stuff at Supreme Court level. So I was around some very interesting, powerful people. And, it was a really, really enlightening experience. But there is also like a grimy side to it.
Oh, yeah. I know from like my perspective, certainly girls I know who've done, been sugar babies and stuff in college and stuff. More often than not, they don't do it properly. There's a ton of like nefarious activity. And then usually always ends kind of in a bad way. Like I know a girl right now who's actually being sued by her sugar daddy.
You're kidding.
So no, yeah, a girl in Atlanta, a friend of a friend. So,
what is she being sued for?
Just all the things he gave her. Like he wants him back. He wants, he said, he was tricked, stuff like that, just guy who's scorched earth, basically, tons of money, she left him. But going back to what you were talking about, I think, kind of relating it to the real world, or to not to the real world, but to like, everyday life. I talked to my therapist the other day about valuing yourself in a relationship, right? You should value like you're a great person and what you bring to the table. And I think with what you're talking about, it's kind of similar. Like you value yourself very highly and you want people to appreciate that value, right? I
actually have a really interesting twist on it in the kind of trajectory of the kind of studies that I do with women. So I say that when you're learning to kind of like date for sex and explore your sexuality, like that's one part of the journey. The journey in becoming a sugar baby, I call it becoming an international thought, that hoe over there with a lot of sense of humor. But I say, like, you're making a choice to perceive yourself as a commodity, but in a kind of empowered way that you're choosing what is that commodity and what is the price and what do you get for that price. So for that price, the person might get to see you have a bubble bath. They might get to have a massage from you. They might not get anything sexual. So it's because I think it's really an exercise in playing with power dynamics if you do it right. But if you don't do it right and you think, oh, what's the name of that website? Basically, right. You're getting dragged into sex work, which is very grimy. You're not that strong to stand up to it, and your soul is going to be crushed because these guys.
And I would just interrupt and say it can be grimy. Your soul can be crushed. There are people who can do it. It's just that. Yeah. Again, the more confidence, the more sense of self and self-worth that you have, the better you're going to do. And so jumping in without considering these things is not going to be the best way to set yourself up for success.
Yeah.
Well, I would say in the last probably 10 years, but certainly since I was in college, this world has become much more widespread, open, especially with these websites and stuff. But unfortunately, I think that a lot of the girls who start out don't have any training. They're young, they're in college, they need money. And so they get into situations probably where, they don't know what to do and which is what I've seen a lot.
And frankly, I've seen older women in their 40s, in their 50s, who also are trying, but again, haven't gone through the whole emotional understanding, self-assessment, and sense of power that they have. Because really all we're talking about, if you thought of movie stars, it's the exact same thing. Like, do they have just a walk-on? Do they do a commercial endorsement? Do they have speaking lines? Will they take off their shirt? Will they be nude? Will they kiss somebody? All of these things play in, and they're using their body in just the same way that a sugar baby or an escort or any other sex worker is using their body. So it's, I think, very common themes. Go ahead, Tina.
I was just gonna ask, like, do you still sugar, or are you kind of?
Well, it's kind of funny. I what I always teach women is, this is like a place on the journey. It's not a destination. So I knew that it was time for me to get out of it. Actually, something very unpleasant happened to me. Somebody that I was seeing, he had told me that he had an agreement with his wife to see me. And he told it to a lot of people, and, then one day I got all these kind of toxic messages from his wife. But I was like, you know what, I've had enough. I wasn't upset, but I was like, I was at a point in my life where I was ready to really meet someone for myself. So it was kind of time to lay that aside. But there's like a couple of people that I know casually from time to time, like if they're in town, I'll go for a drink with, that are still friends. But it was a kind of like an energetic thing. It was kind of like, I had that experiment. I learned a lot from it. And I didn't want to stay in that kind of murky place. Like, I have like big and exciting and important things to do. And even though this may sound really crazy, I have 2 daughters, 16 and 21. And I'm not ashamed of anything that I do. The reason,
which I totally appreciate about you. I think that's the key to doing anything, is to do it proudly.
Because I feel like we just live in this kind of society where women, do not know their self-worth, think they're too fat, think they have an expiration date. And I wanted to create a new world, which is why my company is called Serafina's World, where, women can just kind of live out everything that they want to do and know that they're good enough, they're beautiful enough, they can go to the beat of their own drum, and there's no time for that nonsense and the self-doubt and the self-judgment.
So I'm really curious, how did you figure out what prices, what fees, how do you work that out when in the sugaring world? Is this something that starts at the very beginning of a relationship? Is it ongoing? And to what extent?
This is the thing that I would say. The difference between sugaring and prostitution is a sugar daddy is not, in theory, looking for a sex act. A sugar daddy is looking for a girlfriend experience. And truthfully, it would be illegal to charge for a sex act. That would be prostitution. So a good sugar baby, her work is to make herself interesting enough that the sugar daddy wants to invest in her projects. And I think like that is really the work, because then you really have a skill for life. Because, you were talking to me about, oh my God, you have an idea for a reality TV show. It's like you go through life knowing that nothing is too big for you.
I love the analogy of the MBA thing, because it's totally the same thing. I mean, I have a bunch of friends who've gotten MBAs, but what you're saying just sounds to me like what someone who is getting an MBA is kind of doing. The same thing, networking, exactly. building connections and kind of trying to, build this life that they want for themselves and using the people around them to kind of advance that. So,
and I do think that, listen, I do also really understand that I have a certain amount of privilege, being British, living in New York, the kind of education I had makes it easy for me to talk to kind of high flying people. So I do understand, like, it's not so easy for everyone. But then on the other hand, a lot of people just presume that the world of the sugar baby is only for, 20-year-old Russian models who weigh 100 pounds soaking wet. And the truth is that really isn't true. I know a lot of women who are a little older who do really, really well in that world because they have a certain gravitas, they have a sophistication, they have life experience. So I think on that level, that also can be very empowering. At a time when you're supposed to be, oh my God, I'm middle-aged, I'm invisible. It can actually teach you quite the opposite. No, I actually have an enormous amount of power.
Yeah. And so you say you teach women how to do this. Are you still teaching women? Do you do courses or?
I actually, I just wrapped up. I had a whole year-long course because I used to teach it. I had written a book with my ex-boyfriend, and I don't quite know what to do with that book because we're not together anymore. So everyone kind of tells me the book I should write is my story because my story is juicy. But I teach the material, and he gave me such amazing material. We created it together. So I would teach the material as like an 8-week class. Last year, I did this 1-year social experiment called the Year Sensual, where I had a group of women, married, single, dating, because that's what I realized. I'm not really teaching dating. I'm just teaching how to have a really juicy life. So for a whole year, I had a whole group of women doing this, and it was amazing, incredible results. And I'm just getting ready to start the new one in a week or so. So it's really fun, but to me, it's like really a passion project,
Can they find out about the class at seraphinasworld.com?
Yeah, absolutely. It's called the Year Sensual, and it's not too late to jump in late, but it's fun.
Sounds amazing.
Right. So when you decided, when you'd meet a sugar daddy and you would think, okay, this is somebody I want to be associated with, would you set up kind of a time frame? Did you have a contract, or did you just from the beginning go on this idea that if they want to, they'll gift you? And
no, I never was fuzzy like that.
Okay.
First of all, I would always get someone on the phone and make sure that they sounded, someone that I liked, had a natural kind of charisma with. Then I would do due diligence on them, as much as you can, from having someone's name and phone number, and make sure that they are who they say they are.
Right.
Then I would, perhaps even before meeting them, kind of find out what they're into centrally, just to know if it's even something that, could ever go anywhere. Mm-hmm. And then I would meet with them, just to see if I really, really like them. And then I would really have a discussion about that before anything ever happened, like a very clear-cut conversation, but very carefully and gracefully, So it's not really a conversation about money. It's about, like say if you're a yoga teacher, perhaps there's a yoga retreat that you want to go to, so that everything is discussed ahead of time, because the kind of willy-nilly thing that people get into is like, oh my goodness, but he's going to take me on a trip. What fun is it to go on a trip with someone who's a stranger, to have all that intimacy with someone you don't know? That's not fun on any level. Like that's something you should get $10,000 for, $20,000. So, it has to be done very carefully. So, that's, the bottom line is that is the thing of value that I teach people. It's an intricate dance.
Yeah, you have to build rapport and try.
And you should never be doing it with someone that you don't intuitively like and want to hang out with.
Yeah.
And then once you would do that, would you memorialize it in writing, or was it just oral kind of agreements or understandings?
you know, it might be something in a text thread. The thing is that you also have to understand here is, you know, I mean, that's interesting about the sugar daddy suing someone.
Yeah.
You know, I would love to know how that really turns out. Like, I don't think that there's really any case there. Because,
I don't think so either, but
you know, because just for example, I dated a lawyer. I have a lot of lawyer friends. I'm not going to be bringing anyone to court. You know, so you have to really, it's a lot of it is really trusting your gut, getting a sense of who the person is. You know, have I ever made mistakes? You know, not terrible mistakes. I mean, I have a couple of times met with people who are unpleasant, but it never went further than a meeting.
Yeah. I would also probably reiterate, like in the situation I was talking about, there was also a lack of, not only a lack of communication, but total dishonesty in certain situations between the sugar baby and the sugar daddy in terms of like how money was being spent, where it was going, stuff like that. So I think, you know, if you're not, like you were saying, if you're not honest, if you're, you know, being evasive, if you're using, you know, the things that your sugar daddy is giving you in other ways or lying to him, you know, those situations are different than.
Well, I don't know. I mean, to be honest with you, I say very good luck to any sugar daddy getting any money back, and I doubt anyone is going to want to go to court for that, because it doesn't make you look good, you know?
No, and I think this is more just you know, someone who's scorned, who just wants revenge in this situation. I mean, he served her at her church in front of her husband, you know, that kind of thing, where it was like,
oh yeah,
what
that's
could
just
you
somebody,
do?
yeah,
You know, that.
Yeah.
So,
but I do, just again, as cautionary tales, I know smart women who have embarked on this journey that then engage in some sort of sexy activity with someone, and then their expected payment, reward, tribute, whatever term you want to use, doesn't actually appear later. And then they feel very burned. And I get that. As a lawyer, I had clients who would stiff me, not pay the bills due. And I think that, just as I learned as a lawyer, you got to get your fees up front. I think that probably that's true also, at least at the beginning, when you're just getting to know somebody, because otherwise you take a chance that you're not going to get paid, and just be aware of that.
Well, also, here's another thing. So, for example, in my class, I always say to people, you can learn an enormous amount about this without actually doing anything sexual. So, for example, there was a woman in my last class who, at the beginning of the year, she had a boyfriend, but, you know, she kind of like, he didn't make that much money. She wasn't sure that he was her forever person. So she said to him, because he had wanted to date her exclusively, she had said to him, you know what, I'm not quite at that point yet. And I'm taking this class where I'm exploring learning to date for money. Is that okay with you? And he was like, okay. So basically, she has a coaching practice. And, you know, she's a very principled person, and she was never going to do anything out of her comfort zone. So she went on some of these sites, and, you know, she found the people a little grimy, but she practiced negotiating. She practiced asking, even went out a few times for a glass of wine for dinner. During that period of time, her boyfriend actually got a little bit jealous, and he said to her, listen, honey, like, I realize that I'm really in love with you, and I'm really not okay with this. And she realized that she, in the period of the 6 months of the year, had fallen really in love with him. And she also realized that she was capable of being more of the breadwinner. So she got off of the sites. But she realized, through practicing negotiating in a place where you're supposed to ask for money, she became a much more powerful salesperson in her coaching practice. So she went from being kind of like, you know, she was 3 years into her business, and, you know, was kind of struggling to make ends meet. And just from her experiment in sugaring, she became that coach who was easily having $10,000 months. So it was like a huge thing in her learning curve just by playing with asking. So, you know, it really goes deep. You know, it's a really, really powerful tool when done right. But it's kind of like you have to get people off the giddy high of like, you know, right now I have someone that I'm talking to and she's like, oh my goodness, I'm dating a billionaire. We're going on a trip. And it's like, I'm trying to talk sensibly to this person, but they're on this whole Anna Nicole fantasy, which is probably going to end badly. Mm-hmm. So, you know, but for a sensible woman who looks upon it, like why I'm not really embarrassed to talk to my daughters about this is I'm going somewhere with this, you know, mm-hmm. Like I, to me, it's actually, I'm giving a highly feminist education to people, you know?
For sure. I would agree 100%.
Yeah. I got to say, it makes me kind of curious. I'm like, oh, I want to go check out some of these sugar baby sites now.
Yeah. And the thing is, you know, but I'm not having that feminist conversation with a sugar daddy. Like, you know, I have an alter ego, you know, I call it a magical being or international thought. I feel like for all different places on a woman's life, it's like, to me, I play with my alter ego. You know, like I want to be that person that it's fun to go to a party with. I want to throw an amazing party. And a lot of it is tapping into your sensuality, your sexuality, in a really good way to get what you want. But it's not just as simple as like, oh, she's a sugar baby. That's not good. No, it's like, I kind of feel like your power, your sexual power, it's like your electricity source for men and women, but use it right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. I say that we all have, I think of our sexuality, sensuality, or that it's a pilot light. And there's actually research that shows that when people, men and women, when we're turned on, and I don't just mean like we want to just be fucked. I mean, when we're lit up, when we have that vibrancy that comes from that inner pilot light, we are actually 20% more attractive to people of all genders. So salespeople, servers, anytime, if you're doing a pitch and looking for investors from your business, when you turn that pilot light up a little bit, you are just going to bring people, they're going to want to get closer to you because it's a life force and knowing that. And for years, again, I spent 23 years in a marriage where I did not have that light lit, and it showed in everything I did. So when you turn it on, it is not just your sexy that gets better. It's your whole life. It's your connections. It's your confidence, and then recognizing it. So, all right. Yeah. Any other questions, y'all? I know we're kind of getting to the end of this time too. I knew it would go by quickly, but
Aaron, as always.
No, I mean, I can't think of one that hasn't already been addressed.
How about the other way around? How about sugar, like men who are sugar babies, like just the reverse gender? How does that?
They want a sugar mommy.
Sugar
can
mommy.
I tell you something? It's so funny because a lot of times, you know, guys will say to me, "Oh, I want a sugar mama," and like I laugh at men because now. Listen, I know a lot of male strippers who do sex work, but that's not really having a sugar mama. That's, you know, more like a couple will pay them, stuff like that.
That's more transactional.
Yeah, more transactional
versus a relational.
But most men, like I see these pretty boys and they, you know, it's like a woman doesn't really have to pay for it. You know, even an older woman, you know, like women stay beautiful and sexy. Like women can get whatever sex they want. Like I say good luck with that. Like, you know, I mean, I'm sure it happens once in a blue, but I just see all of the beautiful women friends that I have of all different ages having beautifully fulfilled lives. And I kind of feel like a woman doesn't really have to pay for anything that she wants in that world.
See, it's funny because I think of it as that it gives you the power. It means, because in a relationship, it's a two-way street generally. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to sugaring, what you're saying is that one person gets to basically drive and decide that street is one way. The other street, going is financial. So to me, if I wasn't thinking of sugar daddies as people who couldn't get sexy otherwise. As you said, they wanted a girlfriend experience. I'm thinking it's just that they want it on their terms, when they want it, how they want it, and that they only are expected, they have to give, financial, otherwise the rest gets to be about what they decide to do.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is that the way that I see it is a really good sugar baby makes it about she's having fun. Everyone wants to be on her adventure. So she's having fun with the sugar daddy because, let's go to this club. Let's go to that beach. Let's come out dancing. So she's already writing the script. Yeah. For, like with guys, like we can get whatever guy we want, whenever we want, anyhow. Why would you pay for it? I don't know. To me, it's stupid, I don't know.
I like the take. I like the confidence.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like once that, you see, that's the other whole thing about this journey. I feel like most women in the culture we have now really don't realize their power. Like in a city like New York, where there's so much polyamory, like so many women think, I can't find a monogamous guy. I can't get this. I can't find a guy who'll pay for stuff. And their confidence is so defeated. And then when you go into the parallel universe of the lifestyle and sugaring, if you do it right, it really gets you your confidence, because you realize there are a lot of guys who are willing to pay to take you here, to do this, to do that. And once you've learned your worth in that world, you can get it in the vanilla world too. Mm-hmm. So, and also you see that you don't have to be skinny. You don't have to be young. Men like all kinds of women. You just have to be, a sensual, sassy, playful, whatever. You don't have to fit any model, whatever your archetype. If you're a tomboy, if you're some granola yoga teacher, if you're a sensual older woman, there is going to be a shoe to fit your foot, but you have to get confidence about that. For example, going to sex parties. One of the things that I saw was that men don't necessarily want to fuck someone who looks like a model. Men like all types of women. I learned that also in the sugar world. So kind of like the journey that I take women on, sharing all these experiences, is proving it to them, giving them evidence that they're the shit, they're the girl with good shit going on. Because the world that we live in could take your confidence away. So kind of like this sexy universe can be the very place to give you your confidence back.
I think that is a perfect place to end this. Thank you. That is something that women all over, we all need to hear. So thank you, Sally Blanky from seraphinasworld.com. And that's SERAFINAS world. seraphinasworld.com, a place where men, women, couples can explore sexuality through experiences. Her classes are amazing. She's always got so much to say. And again, she takes such a smart, interesting, worldly approach to sensuality, sexuality, play, pleasure, and goodness. So thank you. All right, folks. Well, thank you for joining us for Come With Us podcast, the podcast when you want the bare naked truth about love, sex, and relationships. I'm Beth Darling from sexyedschool.com. You can go to sexyedschool.com, use promo code Come With Us for 20% off your classes. And again, you can take How to Blow His Mind While Loving His Body, or The Art of Orally Pleasuring Her, or for men, definitely How to Increase Your Orgasms by Up to 10 Times Using a Neneros Prostate Massager. So whatever kind of pleasure you're looking for, go to sexyedschool.com. And I would love to be of help getting you to achieve that. Thank you, Aaron and Tina, so much. I hope you guys learned as much as I and are totally inspired now.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. Big hugs and love, everyone. We'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Come With Us podcast. Be sure to follow us on social media at Come With Us Podcast and send in your questions, comments, and confessions to comewithusconfessions@gmail.com. Until next time, keep it fun, flirty, and naughty.